personal attacks in the American voter. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. First, a rock-solid statement. All famous people in America are targets. If you have money, power, or fame, you need protection from those who would accuse and exploit you. There is a full-fledged extortion industry in this country that attacks the wealthy and corporations through the legal system. All journalists know that. We know we can find people to say negative things about any public person. We know we can make any story come out a certain way. And if politicians or a business person is involved, it's a lark. Enter Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Both men have been severely hammered in the American press, as you know. For example, a front-page article in the New York Times over the weekend heavily implied Mr. Trump mistreats women. But almost immediately, one of the women quoted in the article disputed what the paper said.
He spun it to where it appeared negative. I did not have a negative experience with Donald Trump, and I don't appreciate them making it look like that I was saying that it was a negative experience, because it was not. He never made me feel like I was being demeaned in any way. He never offended me in any way. He was very gracious.
We really stand by our story. We believe we quoted her fairly and accurately, and that the story really speaks for itself.
But the story does not speak for itself. American voters have no idea what Donald Trump did or did not do. Reporters define that. So saying the story speaks for itself is misleading in the extreme. The public is reliant on a third party, a reporter, to inform them honestly. Sometimes that happens. Many times it does not. Talking Point does not know how Mr. Trump treats women in general. What we do know is that he is a flamboyant entertainer, a provocateur who lives lavishly. Voters will have to make up their own minds about Mr. Trump's private behavior, and that will not be an easy thing to do. The same thing is true with President Clinton, also the subject of a provocative article last week. On Clinton Foundation money going to a for-profit energy company owned in part by friends of the Clintons. One footnote, the New York Times did not see fit to print that story, even though they have covered questionable Clinton Foundation situations in the past. Anyway, the latest expose is loaded with innuendo about Bill Clinton's friendship with a neighbor in Chappaqua, New York. Again, Talking Points has no idea about that. What we know for a fact is that Clinton Foundation money flowed to a private company which is now failing for the benefit of people who have helped the Clintons in the past. That in itself is a major story. The innuendo is meaningless. American voters are going to be subjected to an incredible amount of speculative garbage over the next 6 months. The American press is not fair. It is heavily ideological and will spin all kinds of things to try to get their candidate elected. It should not be this way, but it is. And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction. Joining us from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. And you say?
Well, we have a pretty long and distinguished history of a partisan press. I mean, I bring you back to the first campaign you covered, 1800, Adams and Jefferson, where the Jefferson press accused Adam of being execrable. They called him a human, hideous hermaphrodite with neither the force and firmness of a man or the gentleness of a woman. And the Adams people spoke of Jefferson. They wrote this in their papers, that he was an atheist, and under his presidency, murder, robbery, rape, adultery, and incest, I love the incest part, will be openly practiced and taught in the country. So we've got an old tradition of this.
There is a tradition.
If you ask, it's a tradition,
right.
And it was a hell of a lot worse. We've developed these so-called objective standards, which people, at least in the press, they want to appear to adhere to. They don't. We know the mainstream media is liberal and biased against conservative. But that's not new. That's like telling me that the sun rises in the east.
What did you think about the reporter saying, the New York Times reporter who wrote the front page article saying, well, the story speaks for itself? That really got me. Because here you have this woman who's quoted extensively. She's the lead in the story, by the way. And she comes out and says, you know what, this is a bunch of bull. It never happened this way. They spun my words. And then the guy goes, well, the story speaks for itself. Come on, it's absurd.
Well, anybody in journalism knows no story speaks for itself.
But why did he say it then?
It.
If everybody knows that, why did he say it?
He's protecting himself. That's what you're supposed to say. That's the talking point. Everyone knows it depends on how you frame it, where you put it in the story, at the top or at the bottom. There's a classic example of what they say in soccer, own goal. They scored upon themselves. The winner here was Trump, because the headline is Trump challenges New York Times, and the woman supposedly who's in the middle of this supports Trump. So there's no question that he turned it around on them. But to me, the entire story from the beginning was totally lukewarm and uninformative. This is supposed to be behind the scenes, the real hidden secret Trump, how he deals with women. What do you get from it? He treats some well, he treated some boorishly. Now, how is that different from how Trump, the public man, has in public treated women? Well, he treats them well, appointed them to high positions.
I agree. There was a pointless
in his organization, and he treats others badly, like Carly Fiorina, Megyn Kelly, and others. The same guy inside and outside. What was the point of the story?
I don't know what the point of the story was, other than to imply that Trump is anti-woman. Now, the big story on the Clinton Foundation, you know, once again, this giant charity where billions of dollars flows in, this, to me, looks like a fairly substantial story, the New York Post headline aside. I mean, I don't care about that. But using a charity for private gain, to help your friends, to employ your friends, I don't think this is right.
I've thought from the very beginning, and I've said this a lot, especially on Special Report, that the big scandal is not the emails necessarily, but it is the scandal having to do with this so-called charity, which is really a slush fund, hiring the hangers-oners, doing favors, or what appear to be favors. And that's the real story. I've speculated, this is pure speculation, but I've wondered what was in the 30,000 emails that she deleted. She said it had to do with wedding preparations and all this stuff. I suspect if those were ever recovered, if you were deleting emails, what you'd want to delete is any evidence of favoritism or the use of this supposedly charitable money for self-dealing. I don't know what's in there. The press has touched on this here and there, but the real story is a gigantic slush fund that we know was used by the Clintons to advance themselves. Yes, a few good causes, but if you wanted to help the victims of Haiti's earthquake, you wouldn't actually think the best place to do it is to pick up the phone and to call the Clintons. You might actually call the Haitian embassy and give the money directly. If you gave it indirectly, there's a reason.
Yeah, I think it's a big story. I don't think it'll get covered, but we'll see where it goes. Charles, thank you very much.